Next up, we're going to have a lecture by Soto addressing the global crisis and our global urgencies.
It's really bright. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Okay. All right, guys. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the global crises that humanity is facing and how our political and economic system is not equipped to resolve it. According to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we are using 1.5 Earths worth of resources. This means it takes now the Earth 1 year and 6 months to generate what we use in 1 year. This is a huge problem. Moreover, moderate UN scenarios suggest that if current population consumption trends continue, we will need the equivalent of 2 Earths to support us by 2030. That is 18 years from now. It doesn't take much to understand the implications of what this means. More war for resources, the 1 billion figure of starving people today will drastically increase, and the middle class will eventually disappear, giving the literal meaning to the phrase the haves and the have-nots. If there's no debate about whether this information is true, then one has to truly internalize what this means. How would this affect you as an individual or your friends and family? But perhaps this is still too abstract, so let's get into some specifics. Let's talk about the scarcity of an essential element we all need to survive: clean water. We have a clean water crisis. Now, don't get me wrong, many isolated places have had this problem for a while, but now it's global. While nearly 70% of the world is covered by water, only 2.8% is fresh. Only 1% of fresh water is essentially accessible, with much of it trapped in glaciers and snowfields. Boiling it down, only about 0.007% of the planet's water is available to fuel and feed its 6.8 billion people. I mean, I think a lot of us have heard these figures before, but according to Nature, the publishing group, in 2010, about 80% of the world's population live in areas where they are threatened by water security. What are we doing now to combat this issue? One of the main ways is desalination, which is the method of removing salt and minerals from ocean water, making it fresh to drink. There has been some progress. Israel desalinizes water for a cost of 53 cents per cubic meter, Singapore for 49 cents per cubic meter, and Tampa Bay, Florida for 81 cents per cubic meter, which roughly comes out to 25 million gallons of water per day. Now that's enough to supply water to about 50,000 homes. These numbers are not as impressive as they sound. We're going to need a lot more to decrease the threat of water security. It also requires a lot of energy to desalinize, which then exacerbates the peak oil crisis. Not to mention, it takes a huge toll on the marine life in oceans. This is a step in the right direction, but it is not sustainable. See, there are ways to do this where you don't get these negative byproducts, but it wouldn't make it monetarily economical. And here lies, once again, the irreconcilable opposition between what can be done with optimized technology, ingenuity, technically, for all, and what's economical or what's profitable for a few. Let's continue to another fresh life essential resource: topsoil. Topsoil is the upper outermost layer of soil, which is conducive for most of the Earth's biological soil activity. And yes, my friends, we are also entering an era of topsoil scarcity. And for those who haven't put one and one together, this is where we get our food from. According to a study conducted by researchers from the University of Sydney, all the world's topsoil is set to vanish within the next century if current patterns don't change. In Australia, soil is being lost 5 times faster than it's regenerating through natural processes. In the US, it's being lost 10 times faster. In Europe, 17 times faster. And in China, 57 times faster. Now, I've been accused of being maybe too sensitive, you know? But I don't know about you guys, but this stuff really makes me shudder, you know, like inside. In a Financial Times article that deals with this issue, the headline reads, "Superpower is ready to feed the world." Now, this is a country that, because of this crisis, is now exporting a lot of agricultural products. Does anybody want to guess what country this is? Anybody? Brazil. Brazil, because of this topsoil crisis in many countries, Brazil has become the top exporter of chicken, beef, orange juice, green coffee, sugar, ethanol, tobacco, and soya beans. Very soon, output will reach its limit, and the country needs more investments to, especially in transport infrastructure, in order for it to expand. Many investors have their eyes on this because the potential to make a lot of money is there. But the reason I'm focusing on this point is because no matter how fucked up things get in the world, it shows how we as society are still responding to these issues in an individualistic, profit motive standpoint, as opposed to analyzing it from a bird's eye perspective and fathoming holistic and technical solutions. So the question becomes, why is it that our present political and economic system is incapable of resolving any of these problems? Let's begin with the economy. Well, you know, things can get complicated with the economy. So let me highlight one fundamental aspect about our monetary market system. Our economy has to continuously grow and expand for it to exist. It's inherent to the actual system, which means that regardless of how many people are in the world, regardless of how many resources we have to our disposal, people must consume in order to keep the economy alive. So if this is a graph, infinite growth, the economy, and then we have finite resources, the reality of our world. Now, we shouldn't blame our ancestors for not foreseeing this inevitable conundrum. They had no idea we would get to a state where basic life-supporting resources would become scarce, but we have reached that state. If there's any hope we're going to transcend this ridiculous infinite growth paradigm, we have to move to a steady state economy. Now let's move to our political system. Some of us feel that politicians and the state generally make decisions for the better, to benefit its people. Now, if you believe that, then we're going to have a separate conversation after this event. But to be fair, there are usually two general opinions on this matter, or a combination of the two. There are some who believe that many people in power have conspiratorial, nefarious intentions against the very people they serve. Others believe that in the two-party system, look, it just takes some time for things to change, right? So I say, regardless of which one of those perspectives you subscribe to, the fact remains that they are not resolving or even discussing in any significant way any of these problems. In a clip on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, it featured excerpts from speeches from the last 7 US presidents, all saying the same exact thing about oil dependency. That we, America, will break away from our addiction of oil and invest in alternative energy technologies. It's a fascinating clip because the rhetoric sounds so similar. Republican and Democrats, and including Obama, and they're saying the same thing for 25, 30 years, and nothing changes. This stagnancy where politicians pay service about implementing systemic changes happens over and over again with so many issues. And even if you manage to somehow gather the political will from both sides of the aisle, we don't have enough money in the world to manifest the many structural changes that we'll need to deal with some of these global crises. We don't have the money, but we do have the resources. It's very important to understand, very important distinction. We don't have to perceive these politicians as monsters for it to motivate us. But we do have to see them and the system they serve as obsolete in the face of these global urgencies. The faster we understand that our present economic and political system is useless against these issues, the easier it becomes to start searching for something new, for something that works. This is why we are here today, to talk about these possible solutions. Now, some of these solutions are so simple, so common sense, but getting there, actually manifesting them in lieu of our world, is going to be very difficult. That has to be understood. Any possible solution that might get us out of this mess, by default, is going to be very difficult to accomplish. So throughout this event, you might start telling yourself, yeah, that's a good idea, but how are we going to get there? How are we going to actually achieve it? Well, that's a good question. You should totally ask that question. But don't reject these ideas for that alone, because all possible solutions that might lead us into a different path will be a challenging uphill battle. it is not going to be easy. I also want to add here that if the ideas we talk about don't speak to you in some way, if they are not engaging, if they perhaps don't seem feasible, or if you just feel that they're not rational, that is okay. We thank you and we bid you adieu. However, you better start searching for ideas or possible solutions you feel can be implemented or that you can stand behind, because regardless of how you feel, these global issues are very real and it's only getting worse, and we are entering that worst stage. I want to end with a quote by the author Thomas L. Friedman. Quote, "You really do have to wonder whether a few years from now, we'll look back at the first decade of the 21st century when food prices spiked, energy prices soared, world population surged, tornadoes plowed through cities, floods, droughts, and set records, populations were displaced, and governments were threatened by the confluence of it all, and ask ourselves, what were we thinking? How did we not panic when the evidence was so obvious that we'd cross some growth, climate, natural resource, population red lines all at once?" End quote. And I add, and not do anything about it. Thank you, guys.